Imagine this. You're at a relative's house, and on the fireplace sits a small, heavy urn. Someone tells you it's your grandmother's ashes. You nod. You don't ask any further questions. But then a thought lingers. What really happened inside that crematorium? What was the material in the urn? And was it really ashes? The answer involves temperatures hotter than lava, a machine most people have never heard of, and a process far older than you might think. Find out more, right here on Simple Why. Cremation originated in the early Stone Age, around 3000 BC, in Europe and the Near East. By the Bronze and Iron Ages, it had spread throughout the British Isles, Greece, and Rome, becoming a solemn ritual to honor fallen warriors. Some archaeological studies have even found traces of cremation, dating back 40,000 years in Australia. In the West, cremation was banned by the Catholic Church during the Middle Ages due to the belief in the resurrection of the body. However, in the late 19th century, with the advent of modern crematoriums, 1873, this practice began to regain popularity for hygienic reasons and a shortage of land. We often use the word ashes because it evokes a sense of lightness, even a touch of romance, like the remnants of a campfire or a burnt letter. Those in the profession intentionally choose the word ashes to lessen the emotional burden on the bereaved. But if you look at official documents, professionals use a much colder and more precise term, cremated remains. Why this distinction? Because a 1000 degrees Celsius fire doesn't instantly turn a human body into a fine gray dust. Organic tissues disappear, yes, but the bone structure remains. Though burned and brittle, it retains its original form. Language doesn't just describe reality, it actively softens that reality. We choose the word ashes, not because it's accurate, but because we're not yet ready to confront what truly remains on the ceramic surface of the crematorium. Most of us imagine cremation as a flick of a switch and flames erupting. But in reality, the process begins in absolute silence with a filing cabinet and a rigorous identity verification process. Besides identity, technicians must ensure the body is ready for fire. For example, a forgotten pacemaker is a hidden danger. Its battery could explode with the force of a small grenade under intense heat, damaging the expensive ceramic lining of the combustion chamber. Any jewelry or medical implants are carefully noted. It's a tightly controlled industrial process from the very first seconds. A transformation governed by the strict laws of physics and even stricter regulations, ensuring that what follows is always safe and dignified. First, soft tissues like water, carbon, and fat, which make up the majority of our biological composition, would evaporate and oxidize. They would be captured by the atmosphere as gases. However, if the temperature burned everything the same way, the combustion chamber would eventually be empty. The reason some body parts remain is because the human body isn't a homogeneous fuel source. While muscles and organs surrender to the flames relatively quickly, our bone structure is built to withstand them. Calcium and phosphate in bones have incredible heat resistance. They don't burn in the usual way, they calcify. In the end, the organic human part has vanished, but a brittle, porcelain-white skeletal structure remains. This leads to a perplexing question. If everything burns in the same way, why would something be left behind? After the 2-hour inferno, the technician opens the chamber to find a surprising scene. The organic self, the skin, muscles, and memories held in the brain, has completely vanished. But lying on the ceramic floor is not a pile of dust. It is a collection of bone fragments. While our soft tissues are a feast for the flames, our bones are made of calcium phosphate. This is a mineral, not a fuel. Minerals don't burn like carbon-based skin. They simply endure. Under the extreme heat, the bones undergo a process called calcification. They lose all moisture and organic proteins, turning into a stark, brittle white. Think of it like a ceramic pot in a kiln. The heat changes the structure, making it fragile, but it doesn't make it disappear. What actually remains are these calcified fragments, ghostly remnants of our internal architecture. The fire isn't there to destroy everything. It's there to strip away the temporary, leaving behind the mineral foundation that defined our shape for decades. If the fire doesn't create the ashes, then what does? This is where the industrial reality meets our cultural expectations. After the chamber cools, the technician isn't looking at dust. They are looking at a collection of brittle, white bone fragments mixed with pieces of metal, surgical pins, titanium hips, or dental gold. A powerful magnet and careful screening are used to remove these metallic remains. What is left is pure, calcified bone. But since a family cannot be handed a box of fragments, the final magic happens in a machine called a cremulator. This is essentially a high-speed industrial processor. It uses heavy metal blades or ball bearings to mechanically grind the bone fragments into a uniform consistency. In less than 30 seconds, the remains are transformed into what we finally call ashes. However, the texture isn't soft like fireplace soot. It's more like coarse sand or fine gravel. The answer here is ashes aren't a product of the flame. They are a product of human engineering, a final step taken to turn the enduring mineral of our bodies into something we can finally hold, scatter, and let go. In Japan, cremation rates reach 99.9%, a deeply personal ritual. Families perform the kotsuage ceremony, carefully placing bone fragments into urns with chopsticks, starting with the leg bones and ending with the skull. This is not a hidden industrial process, but a public spiritual transfer. In contrast, Hindu traditions in India are more in tune with the natural elements. Along the Ganges River, bodies are cremated on open-air pyres. The fire is seen as a means of liberating the soul, and the ashes then dissolve into the sacred water. There are no heavy steel doors, only the sky and the river. In the US and Canada, cremation is becoming the new standard primarily due to cost and convenience, with rates projected to reach 77% by 2035. Here, the process largely takes place behind the scenes. Unlike the intact bone fragments revered in Japan, cremation in North America involves grinding remains into fine dust that fits into smaller decorative urns. Whether a sacred ceremony or an efficient industrial process, cremation reflects how different cultures bridge the gap between the physical world and whatever follows. In Thailand, cremation is not only a cultural choice, but also the default spiritual path. A Thai funeral can be a grand ceremony involving the entire neighborhood. In a context where Buddhism is intertwined with every aspect of life, most large temples serve as the final gateway to the community. For the royal family, these events reach a colossal architectural scale, with the construction of magnificent temporary crematoriums, symbolizing Mount Meru. When a family receives the urn, they aren't just holding ashes in the traditional sense. They are holding the final mineral essence of a human life. Inside that vessel isn't the soft soot of a burnt past, but the grit of a permanent foundation. This realization shifts our perspective. We often view death as a total disappearance, a fade to black. But as we've seen, the fire is selective. It cleanses the temporary, the water, the soft tissue, the ephemeral, and leaves behind the most enduring parts of our biological architecture. These calcified remains are the hard drive of our physical existence, the parts of us designed to last for decades, now rendered into a form that can be scattered to the wind or returned to the earth. One simple fact at a time, that's how we understand the world. Like, subscribe to Simple Why and tell us your question below. Your why could be our next video.